I never expected a billionaire to fall for me, the poor cleaner dancing alone each night. The day began like any other, soap bubbles trailing down my trembling hands, the smell of disinfectant stinging my nose. I scrubbed the floor, my breaths heavy, drowning in the mundane. But that night, the moon shone brighter, casting shadows that danced like ghosts around me. My heart raced as I turned the music higher, letting the beat pulse through my veins, lifting my soul as I swayed on the polished tiles. Each note tugged at a dream I never dared to dream. I spun, feeling free until a cold chill crept down my spine. I froze. A figure stood in the doorway, framed like a painting against the dim light. I couldn't breathe. His eyes glimmered like shards of ice, piercing and beautiful. A billionaire, dressed in tailored darkness, his presence oozed power and grace. Who was he, and why was he watching me? The other cleaners had whispered tales of him. He's not real, they said. Just a myth. Yet here he was, watching me as if I was the only person in the world. Panic clawed at my throat. My heart thundered in my chest. I felt exposed, like a secret about to spill. I couldn't tear my gaze away from him. A tension hummed between us, thick, almost tangible. Just as quickly as he appeared, he vanished into the night, leaving behind a question that hung in the air. Why was he there? I went home, the scent of bleach and sweat still lingering on my skin. Every creak of the floorboards echoed my thoughts. What did he want? Days passed, and I couldn't shake the encounter. My hands quaked as I worked, the clatter of mops and buckets muted by the memories. My friends noticed my distraction. "You're dreaming again," they teased. But they didn't understand. This was different. Then came the night of the gala. A swirl of extravagance, rich colors, laughter, and echoes of clinking glasses filled the air. I cleaned in the shadows, invisible, but the music beckoned. I couldn't resist. I stepped out, lost in the rhythm, and for a fleeting moment, I felt alive. An elegant woman caught my eye, her sapphire dress shimmering. She glared as if I didn't belong. My heart sank. But the billionaire appeared again. He came closer, a secret smile on his lips. Time stopped. My thoughts fragmented. Did he recognize me? Had he been watching me all along? My pulse accelerated, confusion swirling in my mind. Then, just as he opened his mouth to speak, a piercing scream shattered the night. Glass shattered. People gasped. I turned, my heart racing. Someone had collapsed on the dance floor. Chaos erupted. The sound of my heartbeat drowned everything else. I lost sight of him in the commotion, panic sweeping through the crowd like wildfire. Was he okay? Did he run away? My hands fisted at my sides, trembling. I pushed my way through the throng, desperate to find him. The gala was in disarray, but what if I lost him again? Then I saw him, standing over the fallen figure, his expression unreadable but painfully intense. I caught my breath. What was happening? Was this the moment everything changed? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The chaos swirled around me, a tempest of silk and laughter turned to dread. The fallen figure lay still on the dance floor, and I could feel the panic clawing up my throat as I strained to see who it was. My breath hitched when I recognized Hamora, the event planner, known for her ruthless efficiency and impeccable taste. She was the heart of every gala, the one who turned visions into reality. And now, she was sprawled across the polished floor, as lifeless as the expensive crystals that adorned the chandeliers above. The billionaire's face was a mask of concern, his icy blue eyes now softer, shadowed with something almost human. My heart, which had raced in his presence just moments before, now sank with dread. Could he save her? Instinct drove me closer, and I pushed through the crowd, driven by an unseen force and fear. Hands rushed to assist her, but my heart raced for another reason. What if he needed my help? As I reached him, I felt a warmth radiate from his body, despite the turmoil surrounding us. I caught my breath, watching him kneel beside her, calling her name in a voice that shimmered like glass, delicate yet resonant. Mara, he said, stay with me. I wanted to grab his arm, tell him I could help. I had seen people collapse before, but the words were caught in my throat, tangled with the fear that he wouldn't even recognize me as anything but a ghost in the corner of his world. Instead, I stood frozen, the music, laughter, and confusion melting into a haunting silence around us. Sirens wailed in the distance, a siren's lullaby that filled the air with a sense of impending dread. The room felt heavy, laden with urgency. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw the elegant woman in the sapphire dress again, her expression twisted in disdain as she observed the spectacle before her. The glint of satisfaction in her eyes pierced through the fear. I would never belong to this world, never understand the power plays, the jealousy that lay beneath the gilded surface. But before I could retreat back into the shadows, the billionaire's gaze flickered toward me. For the briefest moment, our eyes locked, and in that exchange, I felt a jolt connection, fear, recognition. He nodded almost imperceptibly, as if sensing I was there, as if I mattered. Did he remember me? How could I be visible to him now? Amid the turmoil, paramedics finally broke through the shrieking crowd, rushing to Mara's side. I stepped back instinctively, but the whirlpool of emotion swirled around me. The billionaire pressed a hand to her forehead, his face twisted in concern that felt almost palpable. Just as the medics began to work, an unexpected voice called out, "Step aside." A tall man in a crisp white coat pushed through. He looked determined, and the confidence he exuded drew everyone's eyes, including mine. As the scene unfolded, hope battled despair within me. I wanted to believe Mara would be okay, that the chaos would resolve into something we could understand. But the billionaire's hand remained near her, and I could see his fingers twitching, his demeanor slipping back into that controlled, wealthy shell. He was losing himself before my eyes, and it broke my heart. Then, out of nowhere, a hand gripped my arm. I turned to find one of my fellow cleaners, Rosa, her eyes wide with worry. "What's happening?" she whispered. Her breaths were shallow, mirroring the dread weaving through the crowd. I stumbled over my words, unsure how to articulate the whirlwind that had just toppled the night. Mara collapsed. "The billionaire, I think he cares." She raised an eyebrow, something almost magical igniting in her expression. "You've got to speak to him. This might be your shot." Panic invaded me. This wasn't my moment, not here, not now. What could he possibly want with someone like me? I shook my head, pulling my arm away from her grasp. But a flicker of Rosa's encouragement kept tugging at me. It felt like a lifeline, bright but fragile. As the paramedics worked frantically, I turned back towards them. I could see him trembling, his composed face fracturing in worry. Suddenly, a horrific realization struck me. What if Mara didn't pull through? What would happen to him, to all of us, to that fleeting connection we had shared? Overwhelmed by the storm of circumstance, before I could think it through, I took a step forward, my heart pounding, an unfurling wave of courage washing over me. I had to offer something, anything. But just as I reached him, the loudspeaker echoed in the hall, interrupting my resolve. "We have an emergency situation. Everyone needs to evacuate the area immediately." The crowd erupted into chaos again, and I lost sight of him amid the stampede of frantic bodies. My heart sank deeper into a chasm of uncertainty, bile rising in my throat. Would I ever have the chance to speak with him now? Would this be the last I'd see him? As I turned away, tears brimming, I caught a glimpse of his figure over the sea of commotion, standing helplessly, trapped in the very world he created, and just like that, he vanished from view. The billionaire, the man who saw me, was swallowed by the night. And in that moment, I felt the weight of lost chances, of choices not yet made, tugging at my soul. Days of cleaning the shadows felt like they had led me to tease a moment where all hope seemed too far-reaching, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that our paths would cross again. And with every beat of my heart, the pulse of longing grew stronger. But when the dust settled, what would remain? The days blurred into one another, each passing hour steeped in anxiety and uncertainty. I woke up every morning to the faint echoes of that night, the chaos replaying in my mind like a broken record. Each time I recalled the image of Mara lying there, I felt as if a weight was pressing on my chest, pushing out the air, the hope, the possibility that maybe something new could emerge from the rubble. Rosa tried to reassure me, always bringing me cups of coffee, speaking to me in that tuneful way of hers, but I could tell she was worried. The gala had been a disaster, and the whispers were insidious, growing louder with each visit to the staff room. They spoke about Mara's condition, about how her absence threatened to destabilize the meticulously crafted world my employer inhabited. As if her worth could be quantified by her position. I wished for a day when my hands didn't tremor from the adrenaline of that night, when the most I had to fear was the daily grind of scraping grime off floors, not the gnawing panic that something crucial was slipping through my fingers. My heart ached at the thought of him in that sprawling mansion, feeling lost and alone. Was he grasping at memories, trying to reconcile the brief moment we'd shared? It was on a grey Thursday afternoon, rain drumming against the windows like taunting fingers, that a familiar figure stepped into the cleaning room. My pulse quickened, not the billionaire himself but his assistant, a woman with sharp features and an air of authority that commanded the room. My stomach twisted with anticipation, my heart danced on the brink of hope and fear. Isabella. She called, scanning the room until her eyes landed on mine. Can I speak to you for a moment? I swallowed thickly, nodding as I stepped forward, unsure of what could possibly warrant a conversation with her. The air felt charged, heavy with expectations that I couldn't quite place. Come with me, she ordered, her tone leaving no room for negotiation. I followed her, each step an exercise in restraint, cautioning myself against the flutter of excitement clawing at my insides. She led me through the grand hallways, illuminated by ornate chandeliers, and I felt like a fish out of water, the stark contrast of my cramped cleaning uniform against the luxurious decor amplifying my insecurities. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was intruding. Finally, we reached a sprawling office filled with floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the city like a ruler surveying their kingdom. And there he was, seated behind a massive desk, his fingers steepled together, a visage of contemplative grace. He looked worn, like a man fighting against tides that would gladly take him under. Isabella, he greeted, his voice a low rumble that sent shivers down my spine. Thank you for coming. I nodded, my throat dry. They say Mara's condition has stabilized, but she's still in critical care. Her absence is people are worried about her, but it's not just that. He paused, his gaze drifting. It grounded me somehow, to see him lost in thought, grappling with emotions that lingered just beyond comprehension. There was a vulnerability in that moment that broke through the walls he often erected, a glimpse at a man tangled in connections that stretched far beyond his wealth. I was hoping you could tell me about her. I need to understand. His deep blue gaze found mine, the inclination of his head urging me to speak, to share whatever fragments of Mara I could weave into the narrative that enveloped him. The realization that he turned to me, a mere cleaner, for insight, was both thrilling and terrifying. I don't know if I can, I stammered, uncertain if I was even worthy to stand in this kind of light. She's fierce and dedicated, the best at what she does. Whenever there's an event, she puts her heart into it. I don't know what else to say, she just makes everything come alive. He sighed, running a hand through his hair, and I could see the edges of frustration cloaking him like a dark cloak. My heart ached for him. Torn between the crown he wore and the humanity he struggled to reclaim. I haven't seen her in days, he confessed softly, his voice thick with something unsaid. I didn't want to lose her friendship, but there are expectations, pressures. I've always kept the world at bay. Sometimes, I offered carefully, people break through. You just have to let them. His gaze snapped back to me, piercing, and I felt as though our souls were spiraling toward each other. But what if you hurt them more than anything else? I searched for words that might bridge that chasm of doubt. Pain comes and goes in different shapes, but love, true love, remains. It's better to experience it than to shut people out. For a heartbeat, the room crackled with unspoken emotions, a shared understanding that stretched beyond mere conversation. Then, as if reminded by unseen forces, his expression darkened. I've crossed lines before, lines I can't uncross. Before I could mull over what he meant, the office door swung open, interrupting the moment. Another colleague stepped in, breathless, eyes wide with urgency. There's a situation, Mara's awake. The doctors need to speak with you. A tidal wave of relief washed over me, but it was laced with apprehension. The billionaire looked at me, his face etched in worry. You might need to help me understand her when I see her. Please. As he rushed out, I stood frozen for a moment, torn between the weight of his plea and the expanse of uncertainty ahead. Would I be able to bridge the distance? Would Mara even want to hear what I had to say? As I turned to leave, Rosa appeared at the threshold, her face a blend of expectation and concern. What happened? What did he want? I swallowed hard, conflicted emotions warping my features. I wanted to share my hope with her, but instead, I merely smiled, an attempt to mask the vulnerability that shook my core. The billionaire was right. Sometimes, love demanded that we step into the chaos, and just like that, I felt the pulse of something greater than myself unfurling, swirling me into an ocean of possibilities. But somewhere deep inside, a chill whispered that perhaps not all treasures were meant to last. As the weight of uncertainty pressed down on us, I couldn't shake the feeling that change was imminent. The real question lingered: would it be for better or worse? The hallway was a labyrinth of polished marble and whispers, where anticipation twined with fear in the air around me. Rosa's eyes bore into mine, revealing her concerns without a word, yet all I could think of was Mara and the fragile thread of hope that had emerged. Just moments before, I had felt the warmth of connection, and now that glow was dimmed by uncertainty. Isabella, Rosa urged gently, her voice breaking through my reverie. What did he say? You look different. Her brow furrowed, hinting at the depth of her worry. He just wants to understand Mara. What if she's angry with both of us? So much gets lost in translation when emotions run that deep. What do you mean? Her tone held a wary inquisitiveness, the way she often asked about the world beyond our modest existence. I think he feels responsible for her, everything. I just hope I can help him fix things. The weight of my words hung between us as we huddled by the door, the distant sound of hurried footsteps echoing off the walls, a reminder that the world was pressing on. Mara would never want you to take that burden on alone, either one of you, Rosa reassured, her voice steady like a lighthouse against stormy seas. You're not just a cleaner, you're a life raft in a world of chaos. I offered her a fragile smile, but the hope swirling inside me felt simultaneously exhilarating and terrifying. I knew this was a pivotal moment, a moment that could shift the tides for all of us. But the question loomed over me: did I truly possess the strength to navigate those rough waters? Without another word, we parted ways. I headed towards the hospital, my heart pounding against my chest, uncertain what I was walking into. The sterile smell, the beeping machines, and the harried nurses were a stark reminder that the world of that mansion felt miles away. On that journey, Remnants of the night haunted me like a shadow, echoes of panic, loss, and the frail promise of renewal that had burgeoned in the office. When I finally arrived, the sharp fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and anxiety laced through the air like a current. I stepped into Mara's room, and the sight of her lying there, pale and frail under the white sheets, struck me like a physical blow. Even in this vulnerable state, she looked regal, embodying the spirit I knew so well. The hospital bed felt so foreign to her bright essence, like a beautiful bird trapped in a cage. As I approached, she stirred, her eyelids fluttering open to reveal eyes that held so much yet seemed to reflect a vast emptiness. "Isabella?" she whispered, her voice fragile, shrouded in confusion. "I'm here, Mara," I said softly, taking a seat beside her. "You scared us all." A shaky breath escaped her lips as she blinked away remnants of sleep. "What happened?" "You collapsed at the gala. They said you had a reaction." "But Mara," my voice faltered, searching for the right words as sincerity threaded through my tone, "everyone cares about you so much. We've been worried." Her gaze drifted to the wall, a flicker of vulnerability flashing across her features. "I've done so much, but I haven't been honest with myself." I felt compelled to lean closer, channeling all the love and truth that resonated between us. "What do you mean?" Mara hesitated before speaking. "There's a reason I threw myself into my work. It concealed my fears, allowed me to stay busy, to not think about what I was really losing." Her voice grew faint, the moment raw with honesty that almost fluttered away like a whisper on the wind. "Losing what?" "Everything." The loneliness in her voice clawed at my heart. "I never allowed anyone to get close, not because I didn't want to. But I was terrified of the possibilities. And then there's him." My mind spiraled for a moment, trying to fathom the depths of her words. "The billionaire?" Her lips curled into a slight smile, but the sadness saturated her features. "Can you see it, Isabella? If things continue as they are, I might lose my job. That's all I had, my identity." Her shoulders shook, and the weight of her fear echoed in the space between us. "Is that all you fear?" Mara paused, her fiery spirit flickering precariously. "No. The fear of being alone, of losing a friendship that means everything. I don't know where things stand anymore." I reached for her hand, feeling her warmth against my own cool skin. "You have the chance to rebuild it, to let someone back in." "Do you mean him?" she replied, her voice almost a whisper, haunted yet wrapped in fragile hope. The unspoken feelings I had barreled toward the surface like erupting lava. For a moment, the weight shifted, the rawness of her words making my heart race with unexpected clarity. "You could confront that fear, reach for something more than just survival." Suddenly, the door swung open, and a doctor entered with a stern look, fragmented professionalism residing in his demeanor. "Mara, we need to discuss your treatment plan." As he spoke, her eyes flickered back to the wall, and the connection between us frayed. I could sense the spinning, entwined emotions retreating, leaving both of us racked with uncertainty again. In a flurry, as the doctor continued explaining the next steps, I felt hope and fear pulse through me like a tempest raw, unrefined. Each heartbeat beat a mantra: what happens next is uncertain. But just before I left, Mara caught my gaze, a spark igniting in her weary eyes, a brief flicker of determination. "Isabella," she said softly, "promise me you'll talk to him. The billionaire, I mean. I think he needs you." As I nodded, uncertainty clawed at my gut. I wanted to be the woman who helped mend relationships, but suddenly the pressure felt insurmountable. "But Mara, what if it falls apart again?" Her lips curled into a faint, fragile hopefulness. "Then you and we will face it together." I turned to leave, the doctor's voice fading into the background, but just as I reached to push the door open, an urgent call broke the flow of our moment. "Isabella." A nurse dashed down the corridor, her expression a lightning bolt of distress. "You have to come quick, something's happened." The shock slammed into me with a palpable force. My heart raced with the ferocity of impending dread. What could possibly be happening now? As I rushed down the hall, leaving all semblance of clarity and control behind, my mind raced through potential disasters like a flipbook of worst-case scenarios. Did Mara stand a chance to mend her connection with the man she held in her heart? In that moment of urgency and uncertainty, I sensed that this journey was far from over. The tide was shifting once again, but whether it would be a rising wave or a destructive storm, I could not know. All I could do was brace myself for the fallout, whatever it may be, as the darkness whispered secrets yet untold were ready to surface. The sterile brightness of the hallway felt alien, walls stretching like sentinels, each step heavier than the last. My heart raced, a wild drumbeat echoing in my ears, an unsettling symphony of fear that compounded with each hurried breath. I followed the nurse down the corridor, her urgency radiating off her like heat waves, casting shadows of doubt over my thoughts. What happened? Is Mara okay? I stammered, the weight of dread threatening to pull me under. The nurse cast a side glance, her features hardened with a mix of professionalism and empathy. "There's been a complication. We don't know the extent yet, but please wait here for a moment." Her words hung thick in the air, pressing down like a lead weight. I felt my chest tighten, anxiety coiling around my heart like a serpent. My mind raced with visions of my friend. What could have possibly gone wrong? I turned toward the waiting room, the sterile chairs lined up like legions of uncertainty. I craved to pace, to move, but settled instead on a single spot, my fingers gripping the armrest hard enough to leave marks. Minutes crawled by, stretching into an eternity, punctuated by the distant murmurs of doctors and the quiet sobs of family members grieving unseen battles. And then, through the fog of confusion, the door to Mara's room swung open, revealing a man clad in an immaculate suit, blue eyes piercing the chaos with unsettling calm. My heart stalled. It was him, the billionaire who had been a specter in the shadows of our conversations. I barely knew him, yet the sight of him stirred a whirlwind of emotions that I couldn't contain. But as he stepped forward, I could see the shadows swirling under his eyes and the jut of tension in his jaw. Something was deeply wrong. "Isabella," he started, his voice cracking under the weight of unspoken fear. "I need your help." I blinked, stunned. "My help? What's happened? Is it Mara?" "They're doing everything they can," but he hesitated, fingers twitching at his sides like a drummer awaiting a downbeat. "She was stable, and then a sudden reaction took them by surprise. We're trying to keep her safe," but the timbre of his voice carried the tremor of desperation, stitching our shared concern into a single thread, pulling us closer, even as the reality of our situation turned lived-in warmth into icy dread. His pain and worry cut through my own, but the memories of the arguments, misunderstandings, and emotional scars fled to life. My heart still ached for him, for what lay between us, the unresolved threads weaving their way through our souls. "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "Isn't this all too much for you?" He took a breath, an evident struggle to collect himself. I tried to step back, to give her space like everyone said, but I can't. "It feels like I'm losing everything." His words faltered, caught by an emotion that seemed to ride up from the depths of his being. "She's important to me." Euphoria flared within me, an echo of hope in a world clouded by pain. "You should tell her that," I pressed, feeling vital momentum build in the space tethered between us. His gaze sharpened, a reminder that we needed to act quickly before hope slipped through our fingers like grains of sand. "You don't understand. It's not that easy." "Why not?" "You've felt it, too. Don't let fear dictate your every choice." The words escaped without thought, my own emotional dam bursting. "You both have the chance to work through this, to fight for something real." His steely facade faltered, revealing something raw and fractured beneath. I just don't want to hurt her more. Not like I did before. I could see the weight of his guilt pressing down like lead. Then fight for her. If you care at all, don't let your past mistakes overshadow what might still be possible. You're a billionaire, take some risks. Just then, a doctor emerged from the shadows of Mora's room, his face solemn and drained. Excuse me, but I think it's time we have an update. The world around us faded, everything felt intensely focused on the bare seconds ticking away in that moment. I reached for the billionaire's hand, as fear coursed through my veins, a shared pulse, a united front against the unknown. In that second, I saw realization dawn in his eyes, a flicker of understanding igniting the flames of possibility between us. But just as he opened his mouth to speak, the doctor's voice cut through. Mora is stable for now, but the cliffhanger of uncertainty quivered in the air, heavy between us as dread slithered its way back into the light. Tension coiled in all our hearts, the promise of hope clashing violently with the threat of despair. What were we about to face? And as the doctor continued detailing the long road ahead, my heart clenched tighter, the realization that nothing was ever truly certain settling like a chill across my soul. Each word he spoke unfolded like a warning, the battle was far from over, and the repercussions of the path we chose to tread were veiled in shadows, waiting to be revealed. In that moment, I braced myself for whatever storm was rumbling on the horizon, feeling the bonds of our fragile connection gain strength through every whisper of hope that lingered, each vulnerable confession echoing in the uncertainty of our fates. And as I glanced back at the billionaire, I recognized that maybe, just maybe, in this midst of chaos, there lay the seeds of a new beginning if we could find the courage to share our truths and the vulnerability to let love guide us through the remnants of our shattered past. The air in the waiting room grew thick with tension, the doctor's words hanging as a damning reminder of what lay ahead. I squeezed the billionaire's hand tighter, feeling the tremor in his palm mirror the quaking in my heart. But she's stable, I repeated, searching for clarity to anchor our hope. Yes, the doctor affirmed, his gaze steady but distracted. However, while we've managed to stabilize her condition, there are risks we cannot overlook. The next 24 hours will be crucial. Every beat of my heart seemed to echo the urgency of his statement. My mind shifted abruptly, thoughts spiraling back to the times Mora and I had stretched late into the night, weaving dreams of a future unchained by circumstance. She deserved this fight, it was what we both had hoped for, right? Yet, the reality of the struggle before us felt heavier than anything I could have ever imagined. The billionaire leaned closer, his breath warm against my ear. What if she needs me? What if I let her down again? His vulnerability sparked an undeniable empathy within me. You need to be there for her, to reassure her, I said, feeling the flicker of courage expand in my chest. People make mistakes, what matters is how you move forward. Your heart can guide you. Before he could respond, a soft voice broke through, drawing our attention. An elderly woman had taken a seat across from us, her lined face a tapestry of stories etched in worry. I heard what you said, she began, her eyes glistening with warmth. My grandson was once on that brink too. They say time is a healer, but love is what brings hope back. You must hold on to that. I nodded, feeling as if her kindness wrapped around us like a protective barrier. The billionaire, visibly moved, raised his gaze. Thank you, he whispered. The acknowledgement was profound, as if we'd both shared in a moment of revelation, one that wafted gently in the air like buoyant dandelion seeds. But it wasn't long before Mora's father rushed into the waiting area, his face pale, filled with the raw energy of a man battling his own fears. His eyes darted toward us, skimming over the atmosphere heavy with bonds and unspoken fears. Where is she? I need to see my daughter. The air shifted, tension snapping like a taut wire. He locked eyes with the billionaire, and it was an unspoken exchange filled with the weight of a past riddled with confrontation. You, he spat, anger coiling around his words. You shouldn't be here. I stepped close to the billionaire, feeling the pulse of his anxiety resonate against my back. The situation is complicated, I intoned, finding my voice steady in the storm. We're all worried about Mara. This isn't the time for divisions. Mara's father's breath hitched as he studied the billionaire, something indefinable passing between them. I could feel the air thickening, the undertow of anger and an unresolved history spiraling around us. Your presence here could do more harm than good, he warned, eyes narrowing. Your issues shouldn't mess with our family. The billionaire met the older man's gaze head on, a temperate resolve settling across his features, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I had instinctively loved, the one who fought for what was right even when it seemed easier to retreat. I'm not here to create trouble. I care about your daughter as much as you do. We need to focus on her. Mara's father stiffened, standing at an impasse between his own fears and disbelief. You think because you have money you can waltz in and own the situation? You need to leave. Silence blanketed us, the finality of his words striking with a sharpness that was difficult to digest. I felt the billionaire's grip tighten around my hand, a silent plea for strength. But I won't abandon her, he replied, voice low but unwavering. Before the confrontation could escalate, the doctor materialized once more, eyes scanning the room with authority. Let's maintain composure. If you would like to see Mara, I need you all to follow Menno. The urgency of his tone broke through the tension, propelling us into motion. I felt the collective heartbeat of us. All, each of us tethered to Mara's fate in different, poignant ways. As we moved toward the room, news swirling and fear bubbling beneath the surface, new energy flickered between the billionaire and me, a fragile hope that we might untangle our past amidst the chaos. As we crossed the threshold into Mara's room, time ebbed, and I felt a rush of emotion flooding my senses. The steady beep of machines accompanied the sight of her fragile form nestled amid a tangle of wires and medication, and my heart ached. I could see the hints of fight within her, the resilience that had always characterized her soul, and I knew we needed to stand together more than ever in this moment of reckoning. But just as the atmosphere settled, the doctor turned to us, an expression of urgency creeping back into his features. We have a situation with Mara's vitals. The shock dawned instantaneously, seeping into every crevice of my being. What do you mean? I asked, panic threading through my voice. There's been a sudden change and we need to act fast. As dread pulled around the edges of my vision, the ground beneath me felt like it was quaking. What awaited us now was a challenge wholly unforeseen, a cacophony of fear crashing against the gossamer of hope we had so tenuously built. I realized at this moment, intertwined with uncertainty and the depth of what we were collectively fighting for, we were all precariously perched on the precipice of fate, and nothing was ever guaranteed. The air in Mara's hospital room was filled with the sterile scent of antiseptic, cloying and oppressive. Monitors beeped erratically, their sounds piercing through the fragile tension surrounding us. The doctor's face was a rigid mask, casting shadows across his brow as he adjusted the settings on the machine monitoring Mara's vital signs. Everyone needs to remain calm, he urged, glancing between the billionaire and Mara's father, both men rigid with fear. I stood by her bedside, my heart racing, feeling utterly helpless, a spectator at the edge of a storm I couldn't control. We are doing everything we can, but her condition is delicate. The next few minutes will determine the course of this situation. Mara's father seemed to shrink, his facade of strength cracking in the wake of the doctor's words. I could see the shifting anguish etched on his face, each heartbeat echoing like a fading drum. She can't go, he murmured, his voice breaking. The once boisterous man threatened to dissolve into tears as he took a step closer to his daughter's still body. Suddenly, the billionaire shifted, stepping away from me, his eyes darting back and forth between the doctor and Mara's father. I can help. We can do more tests, any procedures needed. I'll pay for whatever it takes. His voice held a desperate edge, the promise of unyielding resources spilling from his lips. Money doesn't solve this, the doctor hissed, frustration lacing his words. What she needs is a fight. You need to allow us to do our jobs. Whether she survives this is not in your hands. He pointed to the door, his eyes tempered with authority. You need to step back now. The billionaire's shoulders slumped slightly. The frustration that painted his features jostled against something deeper, an instinctive need to protect, to save. I wanted to reach out to him, to bridge the widening gap of helplessness that was beginning to claw at our shared moments. But I didn't know how. Then, in the midst of our collective tension, a small voice broke through the silence. A nurse had entered the room, her presence a bomb against the fraying edges of our anxiety. Everyone, please. Let's allow the patient's family to be with her now. We know you're all worried, but we must keep the room clear for treatment. One person can stay, and that's it. I looked at Maura's father, at the despair painted across his face. It felt heart-wrenching to see a father so powerless, floating amidst guilt and sorrow. My heart urged me to step aside for him. This was his daughter's battle, after all. But another part of me, raw and insistent, felt the need to stay close to the billionaire, who was still fighting in his own way alongside us. Maura needs her family, I said quietly, feeling the heat of the moment throb around us. I'll step out so her father can be with her. Maura's father met my gaze, gratitude swirling with anguish. Thank you, he whispered, his voice trembling almost imperceptibly beneath his remorse. But as I started to step away, the billionaire's voice stopped me cold. No, please stay, he urged, his desperation cutting through the haze of uncertainty. Her fight is in all of us. I caught a glimpse of his eyes, stormy and alive with longing. I could see he was willing to bear everything for Maura, even if it meant wrestling his own shadows. The whirlwind of emotions brewing between us struck me true. It was palpable, electrifying. The doctor glanced between us and sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose in exasperation, but finally conceded. Fine, just for a moment, then we must work. Maura's father stepped to her side, holding her hand gently while the billionaire and I hovered behind, a collective knot of desperation and hope anchoring us in the moment. The rhythmic beeping of the monitors sang a sorrowful symphony as we bore witness to Maura's stillness. Come on, Maura, the billionaire whispered, stepping forward, his voice rumbling deep. You've always been the fighter. You need to come back to us. We're here, all of us. The words hung in the air, threading through the silence. In that fragile moment, it felt like the walls around us were trembling in response, vibrating with the weight of our shared fears and lingering love. Suddenly, the machines began to beep erratically, drawing everyone's attention. The doctor rushed back to the bed, his previous calm evaporating. Get the crash cart, he yelled, urgency pouring from his every syllable. My heart plummeted as dread spiraled through the air. I felt my breath hitch, and my chest tighten painfully. The billionaire's face blanched, and for an instant, we were frozen in collective disbelief. No. Maura's father roared, rage and sorrow tangling violently in his voice as he grasped her hand tighter. Not again, a nurse pushed past us, urgency igniting the chaos. The billionaire's gaze met mine, raw emotion splashed upon his face, stretching across the creases of uncertainty. We all stood at the edge, trembling. In the clamor of panic rising in the room, I found myself locked in a moment of clarity. No matter how deeply woven our suspecting love had become, this was Maura's fight, and we were helplessly steering through the storm of her fate together. Then, just as the doctor began administering chest compressions, a sudden revelation struck me. I turned quickly toward the billionaire, gripping his shoulder. Well, find a way through this, I urged, feeling my heart amplify against the growing chaos. For her. We owe her that. And as we desperately leaned into the unfathomable uncertainty, the machines began to flatline, an eerie, relentless sound that resonated hollow in the confines of our broken hopes and fears. The atmosphere in the hospital room shifted to an oppressive stillness, the sounds of the machines piercing through the fabric of my thoughts like jagged glass. The flatline echoed, a cold siren that wrapped around us, squeezing tighter with each anguished beep. I clenched the billionaire's shoulder harder, the heat of his skin a storm of emotions beneath my fingers. The doctor continued his work, his face a mask of unyielding determination against the chaos. With each movement, I wished desperately for Mora to fight against the silence that loomed over us, to break through and return to us. I wanted to scream, to force the universe to listen. Mora! Her father cried out, his voice cracking, raw anguish spilling over. He leaned further towards her, as if willing his strength to reach her across the invisible chasm that separated one world from another. Fight, baby girl, the billionaire, standing next to me, moved like a tidal wave in response to her father's plea. He stepped closer to Mora, his expression turbulent, wrestling with emotions too overwhelming to classify. Please, Mora, he murmured, barely above a whisper, we need you. You promised me you'd always come back. In the span of a breath, he turned to me, and I saw a flicker of something indefinable in his gazier vulnerability wrapped tightly in the armor of his status. What if he began, his voice trembling between the tension of desperation and hope? What if we don't get to her in time? Those words shattered the remaining fragments of buoyancy I clung to, like glass against lava. No, I whispered, feeling my heart piece together the fragments of fear. The thought of losing Mora clawed at my insides. We can think like that. But the truth loomed darkly over us. We remained in a suspended moment, caught in a web of fragile promises and unfathomable dread. And then, just as I was ready to shatter under the weight of despair, I remembered the moments I had spent with Mora. The laughter and the secrets shared in the quiet corners of the world we inhabited. Remember that night at the diner? I began, my voice shaking, but reconstructing the connection. When we danced in our own corner, just the two of us. I glanced at the billionaire, whose eyes were now searching mine, craving something to hold onto amidst the tide. She said the stars were jealous of us because we sparkled more. She'd want us to fight for that sparkle. Mora's father turned, a flicker of hope sparking amid his grief-riddled eyes as he latched onto my words. Yes. That's right. She loved the stars. She loved life. His voice rang with fervent belief. She wouldn't leave us like this. Suddenly, the sound of a monitor shifting caught our attention, its beeping strumming uncertainly like a fragile heartbeat. The doctor paused, his breath hitching as he leaned over the machine, a hopeful flicker lighting the corners of his eyes. We're getting a response, he announced, urgency rippling through the room. Keep talking to her. Keep her engaged, stay with us, Mora. The billionaire shouted, his hand resting gently on Mora's forehead, brushing away a strand of hair. Remember the deal. You come back, and I'll show you the world. Just hold on a little longer. A soft gasp suddenly escaped from Mora's lips, a sound as fragile as glass chiming in the wind. I looked closer, barely conscious of the fact that I was holding my breath, every ounce of my being willing for her to fight back. Mora, we're here. I cried, my voice fragile like spun sugar. You have so much left to do. So many dreams. As if responding to my plea, her eyes fluttered open, just slightly, barely catching the light. A rush of hope surged through the room, a tidal wave that momentarily washed away the despair we had been wading through. But even as the doctor's hands flew over her, monitoring the signs, was it hope I saw flickering in the solemnity? Mora, can you hear us? The billionaire whispered, his hands trembling as he clasped her still fingers. Please, just squeeze my hand. Let us know you're still in here. I held my breath, our lives suspended on the precipice of that moment. Slowly, almost a whisper, a soft squeeze pulsed back as if her spirit had ignited, awakening under our lighter soft, tentative connection laced with uncertainty. Did you see that? Mora's father exclaimed, tears streaming unchecked down his cheeks. She squeezed. She's still in there, but just as a new spark of hope was ignited, an unsettling fluttering rang through the room, the monitor spiking violently once again. The doctor's face turned grave as he leaned down, his eyes wide and alert. We're losing her again. Increase the pressure, go for the defibrillator. I stepped back, my heart racing as the weight of reality crashed back into focus. No, please. I cried out, witnessing the chaos again usurping the fragile hope. The billionaire looked at me, fear etching deeper into the lines of his face as the dilemma between faith and despair unspooled before our eyes. Stay with us, Mara, please, I urged, but the transparency of my own fear threatened to fracture as the adrenaline pulsed through the air, a wild heartbeat withheld in the balance between hope and despair. Just then, the sound of the door creaked open, and an unexpected figure stepped inside. It was an elderly woman I recognized from the waiting room, her hands clasped together around her heart. She approached us slowly, her eyes radiating a soft echo of comfort. Keep her spirit close, children, she said gently, her voice a soothing balm against the throbbing drum of anxiety. Love is the strongest medicine, and in that moment, just as I registered the woman's unexpected kindness amid this tempest, the machines began their relentless, mournful wail, again clear and sharp like a knife cutting deeper into our frail resilience. My breath hitched, and I turned sharply to the billionaire, whose face was now a tapestry of colors: fear, desperation, defiance, and something else, something hopeful and heavy. Whatever happens, we must remember her, I whispered, grasping his hands tight. But before we could respond, Mora's chest heaved as if she were fighting to break free from invisible chains. Her eyes fluttered open wider this time, locking onto the billionaire's gaze, a glimmer of clarity shining behind the clouds. Then she whispered words that crashed against my heart like thunder. I found the stars, but and with that, she faltered, the room swirling with chaotic uncertainty. In that instant, our world narrowed into a single gasp, an unyielding question hanging in the tension: what had Mara found beyond the light? The truth pulsated in the balance, and the uncertainty of the moment stretched to infinity as time seemed to grasp us all once more, teetering on the edge of revelation and despair. The room fell into a heavy silence again, but it wasn't just the oppressive fear that settled like a storm cloud. It was the weight of Mara's breath, each rise and fall echoing like distant thunder. I leaned closer to the bed, desperate to bridge the gap of her fragile existence's two worlds colliding, one fading into shadows. The billionaire's face was ghostly pale, his brows knitted with a fierce intensity as he held Mara's gaze. You found the stars, but what? He pressed, his voice thick with urgency, a plea for clarity to guide our wavering light. Mara's lips parted, desperation clawing at the last words she might ever speak. But there another breath inhaled, shaky and frail, threaded with pain. They're calling me back. Her father staggered back, as if he had received a blow, the depth of her words echoing a truth unspoken but profoundly felt. No. You need to stay here with us, baby girl. We can fight this, together. His voice broke, a harpoon of raw emotion launched into the ether of uncertainty. Mara, please. I pleaded, grasping at the fleeting connection we had forged, desperate for her to find that vibrant spark within. You're our light. We need you. But even as the words spilled out of my heart, I could sense the delicate thread connecting Mara to us stretching taut, ready to snap under the weight of destiny. The machines pulsed with frantic urgency, each beep adding tempo to the chaotic symphony of our fears. Life and death played in haunting harmony. The elderly woman's presence felt more luminous now. She stepped closer to me, her weathered hands reaching out to comfort. Sometimes, a soul must wander, but the love you give them can be a tether, a path back. Breathe love into her, children, she urged, her tone imbued with warmth that seemed to radiate through the chaos, an unexpected lantern against the encroaching dark. And with a trembling heart, I leaned down to whisper directly into Mara's ear, every syllable wrapping around the love I had for her like a lifeline. Mara, listen, your father, the stars, and I, we all need you. You are our spark, our cosmic dance. You promised, remember? We're all waiting for you out here to see the world. As if she could hear the rhythm of my heart, her eyelids fluttered, and the faintest flicker of recognition danced across her features. But then, something shifted as sudden darkness swept through the clarity of her gaze, and she gasped, struggling against some unseen force. I can, she managed, the weight of her words a suffocating shroud that draped over us like an anchor. It's too bright now. The billionaire cried, fear erupting from the depths of his soul as he shook slightly, moving closer, almost imperceptibly toward the brink of madness. You have to fight, Mara. We will find you, wherever you are. I'll bring the universe to you. But with those bold words fell a desperate chill sweeping through the room, as if reality had begun to fracture under the sheer weight of hope and despair. Mara, I urged, my voice cracking under the strain, wishing I could wrap my arms around her spirit and shield her from whatever was pulling her away. You have so much love here, so many stars waiting for you. Don't let them take you. Each minute felt like an eternity, the unrelenting beats of the machine melding with our hearts as we tried to manifest the essence of life flowing through her. And then, within the cacophony of our grief, I noticed something unusual, a flurry outside the room, a series of hurried footsteps approaching. A nurse burst through the door, her expression fraught with urgency. We need to stabilize her. We're preparing for further intervention. My heart sank. The words unsettled our tiny coalition, draping looming shadows of finality across our every whispered dream for Mara. I gripped the billionaire's hand tighter, spearing looks of sheer consternation at him, our unspoken agreement echoing a silent plea to the other. Do whatever it takes, he urged, his voice now a storm of resolve, but underneath, fear threatened to drown us both. Just keep her with us. Turning back to Mara, we leaned in closer. You're a fighter, remember? I reminded her, the heat of desperation flowing through my veins, igniting every breath until it became a steady mantra. We're your anchors. You only need to hold on to us. As the chaos unfolded outside our bubble of connection, the fleeting curtain of consciousness flickered like the dying glow of a candle flame. Mara's lips barely formed one last whisper, something barely audible amidst the roaring uncertainty. I didn't, she murmured, her voice dissolving into the ether like a note lost beyond the stars, words tumbling into uncharted territories. Suddenly, the monitor blared a frantic alarm, a blinding flood of distress signaling a new crisis, but within that chaos, Mara's eyes darted to meet mine, holding something more than fear, clarity, confusion, and then something darker. A glint of danger sparked across her gaze, an urgent revelation hovering just beyond reach. My heart hammered as I fought against a suffocating sense of impending dread, while the doctor continued to bark orders, and the room erupted into frenzied movement. The weight of the universe seemed to shift, and as I locked onto Mara's eyes a chilling thought flashed through my mind. What if she was not the only one fighting for the stars? What if the truth Mara found out there was something we weren't ready to bear? And just as I stretched forth my hand again, yearning to breach the distance, the lights flickered ominously above us, plunging the room into a darkness deeper than despair alone could provide. A new burden clung to the shadows, one heavy with the unspoken truth that threatened the edges of reality. In that oppressive darkness, time seemed to unravel, hinges creaking softly against the weight of every heart that thrummed with uncertainty. There, surrounded by a tangle of bright, flashing lights, the world faded into a blur, leaving the raw, jagged edges of fear untouched. But in that moment, a single thought pierced through, a flicker of fierce resolve igniting deep within my gut. I turned back to Mara, her form nestled in a sea of machinery and cares, and I found myself inching closer. Remember who you are, Mara, I whispered, my voice a desperate prayer against the night enveloping us. You're full of fire and dreams. We all believe in you. You fought battles before, and you can fight this one with us. Don't let go of the stars, fight for them. The machines roared back to life, their frantic beeps filling the void, becoming the echo to my words, a rhythmic chant urging her to stay. For every moment that passed, I felt our connection weaving tighter, anchored in collective love that defied the cold grasp of despair. I looked to the billionaire, our eyes locking as we shared a sense of purpose that transcended the chaos clawing at the edges. My heart thumped in tune with his, wresting away the apprehension that threatened to blind us. Mora's eyelids fluttered again, and the shadows in her eyes seemed to dance as if something vital was stirring. "But the stars," she murmured, her voice carrying a vulnerability that tread softly across our fraying resolve. "They were so beautiful, I wanted to be with them. I wanted to belong." My breath caught, the gravity of her confession laying bare a darkness we could not afford. "You belong here, with us. You're not alone, Mora. We're your family. Every dream and every star we reach, I need you here to share them. Don't leave us behind." The urgency of my words pulsed through the air, rippling in shades of fear and love. The billionaire stepped forward, his fingers brushing against Mora's hand. "You're the light that leads us all. Don't let go. You promised you'd guide me out of the shadows. We're ready to explore this world together. You have more moments to fill with laughter, with light. You haven't seen everything yet." I could see the spark in her eyes widening, that flame flirting with comprehension as her expression shifted, a flicker of acknowledgement weaving through the fabric of her fears. For an instant, I dared to hope once more, but within that moment, the sirens outside faded. The cool weight of shadows tugged at corners of the room as voices echoed against the sterile walls, a tide around us shifting violently back to the brink of chaos as the doctor's voice rang sharp above the commotion. "We need to stabilize her now or fight, Mora. Please, stay with us." Each voice rose, lifting like prayerful chants to the heavens. An ethereal light flickered through the stillness, illuminating the heavy shadows. For a heartbeat, silence engulfed us. It felt as if the universe paused, as if everything hung in balance, and then came the sound, a steady beep, sudden and unwavering, filling the air where uncertainty had hung before. It pulsed through the room with zeal that defied the shadows and embraced the breath of hope. Because in that fleeting moment, it felt like the stars had whispered back to us, weaving together the strands of life that tethered us. The doctor's eyes flickered with a pulse of something deeper than emotion, a tinge of relief mixing with pressing intensity. "She's stabilizing. We have a pulse. Everyone stay close." The rush surged like waves crashing upon the shore, the light flooded the room as hope rekindled in the hidden corners. It was one step, but it felt like a race toward a new beginning. Mora's gaze shifted again, searching for the familiar warmth that could anchor her here, into the world where love blossomed without constraint. "Stay," she whispered, more like an echo finding its way home. "I am right here," I replied, tears gleaming beneath the harsh lights, tangled hope swirling into understanding. "We're all here, Mora. We're not losing you again." The billionaire squeezed her hand tighter, his shadow shifting closer to envelop her with a warmth both fierce and gentle. "Promise me you'll fight for those dreams, for us, for everything yet to come. We were meant to shine bright." And as her fingers twitched in recognition, a fragile strength wrapped around us once more, the reality of love binding every fractured piece, stitching together the echoes of what had almost slipped away. As the doctor moved closer, relaying further instructions amidst the steady beats of machinery, hope draped like a soothing blanket around our shoulders. We were right there with her, tethered in that moment of candor and luminous vulnerability. Days turned into nights, and with time, we witnessed Mora emerge with a flickering strength from shadow into light, a star reborn from the grasp of night. The recovery wasn't linear, each day punctuated with trials and new revelations, but we faced every moment together, shoulder to shoulder, in the laughter and tears. With every fragile step she took, the walls of fear crumbled, replaced by a world imbued with promise, the redefinition of love. In those moments shared amidst fall and rise, the billionaire transformed, no longer just a figure cloaked in ice and grandeur, but a heart open to the wild luminosity of connection and trust, the shelter of compassion woven into the fabric of existence. We created a future that surpassed every limitation, a celebration of rekindled dreams dancing under the glare of the stars they had once touched. As the seasons changed, I found myself back in that echo of dance, moving among the shadows, now transformed under the warmth of rekindled friendships. Mara's spirit shimmered like the stars above, bold and ever-present, reminding us of resilience born from love's unwavering light. And as I tilted my head back, gazing up at the tapestry of twilight, a constellation of hearts stitched across the sky, I held on to a whispered promise that rang true. It didn't matter how far we stumbled or how many stars we reached for, it only mattered that we fought to navigate through the dark when life challenged our light. In that moment, with Mara illuminated beside me, I realized a truth echoed loud and clear, one that would live in my heart forever. Love deep, unwavering, and fierce was the main star guiding us back home.